Rory Souchet here in the studio with an independent geopolitical analyst and renowned author, legendary author, Pepe Escobar. It's so good to have you with us today. A very warm welcome.
Enormous pleasure to be back at the studio.
And you're back in Moscow for a few weeks. You've been going around seeing the sights.
Yes.
I saw one of your articles recently. You were summing up how everything is running pretty much normally, you were saying.
Yes, I've been here for less than 3 days. And my first day, I went on an epic 6-hour trip around Moscow.
Brilliant.
And I didn't see any crisis. It was a shock, of course. And everything working perfectly, supermarkets, delis, GUM, and the people that I met on the way. Fascinating conversations, because I had a sort of a multipolar world encounter. I even found, for instance, a Georgian-Ukrainian lounge singer born in Donetsk.
Well, look,
and
Pepe,
we had a wonderful conversation.
You are one of the frontline pioneers of this multipolar world that we are all moving into these days. Now, look, let's just get down to the nuts and brass here. Russia is being sanctioned by 15% of the world. Meantime, you've got the SCO, ASEAN, BRICS. You've got these groupings of the global south, these coagulations, or these groupings of strategic family alliances between certain countries. BRICS is very, very important. But tell me about this, the multipolar world, Pepe. Is it an illusion, or is the West actually losing its grip?
It's actually being born, which is something that a year ago we could not even imagine. So this is a direct consequence of the SMO. The SMO accelerated a process that already existed. Consolidation inside the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, for instance, when they bring Iran as a full member. Consolidation of BRICS when the Chinese and the Russians start thinking we need to expand BRICS. So they came up with the concept of BRICS Plus. And the first ones who actually conceptualized BRICS Plus were the Russians. And, of course, the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, the Chinese. The Chinese this year, after their zero-COVID policy, 2023, it's a new drive for the Belt and Road Initiative, the new Silk Roads. Of course, new governments in South America that are much more progressive than before. And very, very important, the Persian Gulf is waking up. And maybe they see that something is happening around them. And they put their finger on it like, maybe now it's our time to become protagonists.
Pepe, they're standing up on their own 2 feet.
Exactly.
This is what's
they're
going
becoming
on.
Protagonists. Today I was at a fascinating discussion at the Valdai Club, including people from the Persian Gulf, including analysts from Iraq. It's a completely different mindset compared to 1 year ago exactly. Now we see Qatar, Kuwait, Emirates, Saudi Arabia. As part of GCC, we're going to be protagonists. We are part of OPEC Plus, but not only that, we're going to be part of BRICS Plus as well. They are all in line to join BRICS.
Well, but not just that, though. It's almost like you could categorize these countries as the de-dollarization coalition.
Yes.
Now, let me ask you this, Pepe. We have a conflict in Ukraine right now. You've got Russia essentially going up against the best of the West in the very unfortunate staging ground of Ukraine. But what people don't seem to realize is there is an economic conflict going on right now, this de-dollarization coalition of the countries you just mentioned, and potentially a new commodity-backed currency regarding the BRICS and these other countries that are all coming together. De-dollarization, Pepe, it's accelerating.
And this is the most important factor of everything that's been happening for the past year, bypassing the dollar. This discussion, we should not forget, started inside the BRICS when Lula was still the Brazilian president. So this is 15 years ago. And Lula, Hu Jintao, and Medvedev, and Putin and then Medvedev, they start discussing about it, but they didn't have the mechanisms and, of course, the international framework to start working around it. Now we see, for instance, the Eurasia Economic Union, with Sergei Glaziev, for instance, they're actually working on the design of a new currency. They are talking to the Chinese about it. The BRICS started their own debates inside the BRICS. So soon we're going to have a convergence of Eurasian Economic Union, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and BRICS will say, let's sit all of us in the same table with our different projects for a commodity-backed and gold-backed currency.
Can they be bullied, Pepe? Can they be bullied? Because
Yes, of
this
course.
goes against the Western hegemon.
Not only they can be bullied, but the people in the U.S., in the financial market, who are already awake to what's happening. I'll give an example. Zoltan Pozsar, strategist for Credit Suisse. When he wrote a piece about it, wow, like everybody in New York in the financial market read it and they said, oh my God, so this is the next thing and we have to prepare for it. So can you imagine Vanguard, State Street, BlackRock preparing for a future without the dollar or with a new currency designed in Eurasia?
But Pepe, how many central banks in the past couple of years, and particularly the past 1 year with an increase, how many central banks right now are hoarding gold?
Wow. I would say, apart from the Europeans, everybody.
Everybody, because they know what's coming. And what is coming, Pepe?
In the Global South, it's an extremely complex process. We cannot rush to judgment at the moment. What we do know is that the acceleration, especially these past 6 months, in terms of designing a new currency, experimenting with how it's going to work. We have economists, top-level economists like Michael Hudson already exploring ways of making it work. And, of course, the fact that if you design something inside the Eurasia Economic Union, you have to sell to people outside. It's a very complicated process. So you have to sell it to the BRICS countries. That includes countries in Africa or in South America, for instance. And to unify all these nations in a common project, it has to be absolutely surefire, and we still don't know what's going to be.
Well, look, you talk about the China's the new version, the modern-day version of the Silk Road, and,
yes.
and what is this? All these different countries getting involved with this massive trade route. I mean, it's by land, it's by sea, and it's by national currencies.
Absolutely. And I'll give you an example which is parallel to the Chinese New Silk Roads. It's the North-South Transportation Corridor, uniting Russia, Iran via the Caspian, and India, bypassing the Suez Canal. This is enormous in terms of creating a new trade route, which is New Silk Road as well, but it's not linked to China. It's parallel to China. So what are the people of the Eurasian Economic Union saying? Let's unify them. Let's make it one big single project. I know different corridors, of course, because we're talking about trade corridors. China has at least 5 going from China to Europe. International North-South Transportation Corridor is essentially 1.5 if we include the Caucasus as well. But it's basically Russia, Iran, Caspian, India, but with ramifications, because it can go via Afghanistan to Central Asia, it can go to the Caucasus as well. So if you put this all together, you see a maze, a new trade network across Eurasia, unifying every region from West Asia to East.
This is the new paradigm.
That's the new paradigm. And if you try to discuss this in the West, they don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they're going to be, look, at this point, they're going to be left in the dust because apparently they're going to be so far behind. They're going to miss the boat on this one, but by all things considered.
Well, Europe is already, Rory, Europe is already missing the boat, not only conceptually, but physically and intellectually, which is something that we will never expect to see in the 21st century.
Pepe, listen, we just don't have enough time. I'm going to have to break this off and bring it to the special military operation in Ukraine right now. In fact, when I heard you were coming into the studio today, I told some of my friends. My friends started sending me questions to ask you. So one question for you here from my friend Michael, who says, regarding Ukraine, he says, given the length of the operation so far, what are your thoughts on it actually having been already planned as a one-year op, considering if it had all ended early, in May, let's say, we wouldn't have seen any of these revelations, all these biological laboratories in Ukraine, neo-Nazi battalions, allegations of money laundering and weapons trafficking. A lot of the things perhaps would never have come out.
Yes.
So that's one thing, but how do you see Ukraine playing out now?
Well, let's be extremely realistic. The only ones who know the ins and outs and the inner workings of the special military operation are the people at the top of the Russian general staff. Nobody else knows anything. It's the famous Hollywood dictate. Nobody knows anything. This is what you usually say in Hollywood. Of course, Putin, the National Security Council, Patrushev, and Russian general staff. So the way they play strategic ambiguity, it's a masterclass, geopolitical and even geoeconomic in many aspects as well. They are exhausting NATO's arsenals. They are exhausting the patience of the West, and psychologically, the burden on the West is getting higher every day. They are not in a rush. They are waiting for, I would say, strategic openings along the front line that they can profit to conquer territory, conquer regions, or at least destroy even more effective Ukrainian armed forces.
Is it going to go on much longer? Do you
Yes.
think? It is going to go on much longer.
Yes,
You do see that.
But there's no question about that. At least 2023, certainly at least 2023, and a little bit of 2024.
So does that chime in, Pepe, with what the Ukrainian President Zelensky said just a few days ago? He was recorded and envisioned saying this, because, you know, he keeps saying to America, when America sends all the weapons, he keeps saying, that's not enough. I need more, I need more, I need more tanks, now I need fighter jets.
Right?
It is the script. But Pepe, answer this. Zelensky was filmed saying, soon the sons and daughters of Americans will have to fight in Ukraine, and they will die, God forbid. That's exactly what he said. Now, when he said that, comments went viral, and a lot of people got very upset. When you think about the billions in cash being sent to Ukraine, or the weapons being sent, Zelensky says it's not enough, and now I want your children to come and fight in Ukraine. How do you read that?
That was a threat.
You think
and
so?
That was a threat from a cornered animal, and a cornered animal that doesn't know the mood of internal public opinion in America, which they would never allow American troops in a country that has zero strategic threat or benefits for the U.S. It's never going to happen. And of course, as much as I call him a crash test dummy, the man who reads teleprompters, he's not in charge of anything, as we know. There is what I call the Biden combo behind, including the toxic trio that Cy Hirsch proved almost unambiguously. They planned the bombing on Nord Stream 1 and 2. Sullivan, Blinken, and Nuland. These are the rabid neocons or neoliberal cons, as we call them, who are driving this absolutely psychotic, Russophobic American foreign policy that when you discuss it with people, the old school practitioners in the US, like Ray McGovern or Colonel McGregor or Larry Johnson, etc., they are absolutely horrified by what's going on.
Yeah. You mentioned Nord Stream just now, Pepe.
Yes.
Do you think the truth will ever officially come out? And do you think the culprits will eventually say, yeah, okay, you know what, we did it?
Unfortunately not, Rory. Unfortunately not, because this would involve an internal NATO investigating itself, number one. Number two, the EU investigating itself. Number three, the German government investigating itself. Number four, the possibility of treason by Scholz, von der Leyen, and many others against the interests of Germany and the EU at the same time. And number five, the consortium, the Nord Stream consortium, the companies could sue heavily the perpetrators of the bombing of Nord Stream 1 and 2. So this is not going, we know it's not going to happen.
But it wasn't just a Russian pipeline. There were Austrian
Exactly.
and French
Austrians,
and Swiss.
Dutch,
all
French,
these different European companies involved in this.
Exactly.
Pepe, listen, but I got to just bring up China for a moment here. China is getting slagged off a lot in the Western press right now. The Western press is saying that China is potentially supplying military aid in some way or another to Russia.
No evidence.
No evidence, that's right, but they're saying potentially. But I was just going to say, you know, I mean, if all of these NATO countries and all of these European countries are pumping Ukraine full of weapons, wouldn't it be, I don't know, fair for an ally of Russia to also help Russia in the conflict? Or must Russia not have a single hand of help from any of its potential allies?
That's the perfect answer, and you provided it, Rory. Of course, everything that Russia does is wrong, is absurd, is malign, as they love to say it in the State Department lingo. And of course, in terms of you never see a direct definition anywhere across the space that I call Natostan that this is a proxy war by the collective West against Russia. You will never see that, and you'll never see that admitted. You see it admitted halfway by Samantha batshit crazy power here and there, even Baerbock here and there, but her IQ, as we know, is like, So
well, she said the quiet part out loud.
She said the quiet part out loud, so she doesn't even know how to read a proper script. So this is what we got in terms of Western elites at the moment. And that explains, I would say to a large extent, why we are at this geopolitical stage at the moment, because the mediocrity of these Western political elites as a whole, from North America to Western Europe, is something absolute. I can imagine if Olof Palme or Helmut Schmidt were alive today, they would be horrified.
Yeah. No, it's astonishing the way it's going. And Pepe, listen, I've been told to wrap this up. We have no more time, but I'm going to give you 20 seconds.
Okay.
20 seconds. Tell our viewer right now what they need to know about this changing multipolar world.
It's already happening. It's going to take a few years. It's going to be consolidated before 2030. It is the start in practice of the Eurasia century. And at the front line, we're going to have Russia, China, Iran, other countries across Eurasia, including Turkey, and a very big role for countries in the Persian Gulf and in the Arab world.